Welcome back, Flyers nitty-gritty fans, to Getting Gritty with It with your host, Yariv, Wolok, my partner in crime, Vasili, Gianarakos. Vasili, welcome back for another episode, buddy. How you doing?
Doing really good, Yariv. We're back again for another episode. It's an exciting one just because, rookie camp's just around the corner, training camp as well. So getting right back into the thick of things with hockey. How are you doing, though, Yariv?
Doing well, buddy. Doing well. And I think we're both excited about this one. And very timely. I'm really excited about the date because we're really right around the corner. And I don't think anybody could introduce us better than the voice himself, Jim Jackson, back to the podcast. Jim, thank you for joining. Welcome back.
My pleasure, guys. How are your summers?
It's been busy work-wise, but hockey-wise, you were just saying before we recorded, man, it's been a slog, a lot of complaining, a lot of listening to people complain, a lot of venting.
A lot of venting.
Yeah.
A lot of interesting storylines around the Flyers and just, the organization in general. So it's going to be kind of good to get back, I think, and focus on the hockey side of things.
Totally agree. It's time to play. It's time to drop the puck.
Yeah. Totally. And I think we'll get right into it, okay? Because, look, we got a good amount of topics. Things are actually coming in now. There's some things happening. We're about to watch a game later in this week, at least the rookie game, which is really cool. Get to see some, early previews and some actual, Flyers hockey to some degree. But obviously, there's the biggest new change to this team, and I think everybody feels it. Outside of getting a GM, I don't think you can bring a bigger change immediately than bringing in a new coach. But John Tortorella is here, already, making the headlines here in Philly early. Obviously, not that surprising. But let's get into his recent topic, because I think it's obviously been a topic all off season. But the recent comments that he kind of said on the radio, but I think he kind of echoed prior to that, just about believing that the locker room is fractured. Just to Jim immediately, what do you think about him? One, saying it publicly. Two, do you remember a Flyers locker room being this fractured? And also, do you agree with him? Do you think it is as fractured? Just, because he is kind of an outside coming in, and, you are close to the team as well.
I don't think it was fractured in terms of the players. There's a lot going on with the Flyers in terms of staff and so forth. Mm-hmm. And I think that's playing into it too. It's not just about the players. Fractured is a strong word.
Splintered, I think he used.
Yeah.
Correct.
Fractured is too strong.
Yeah.
Splintered maybe, because I really think that any new coach coming into a situation points that out. Some are more blatant about it, and John Tortorella is a person who is very direct and very to the point. So he got right to it, but he wasn't this concerned about that before he had the meetings with the players. So clearly something that he has seen in talking with players, talking with staff, talking with Chuck, talking with all the people around the organization, something has set him off to this idea that the culture is off. It really depends on what you're talking about in terms of the culture. Your question was, have I ever seen a room fractured like this? I saw a room that had Ilya Bryzgalov, who was one of the worst teammates in the history of the Flyers, that still was able to win some games. So it really, and I saw some other locker rooms before that were definitely, I had seen issues. Now, keep in mind, the last 2 years, I haven't been in the locker room. As obviously COVID has prevented that. I was on the plane last year. I was around the guys some last year, but not nearly as much as I have been in the past, where I would hear and talk to players and you'd hear stuff, and completely isolated from that. So if there was a major problem last year, I might not know about it, because we were just like anybody else, seeing what you saw in Zooms, and that was about it. We talked to the coaches. I didn't get an impression talking with either Alain Vigneault or Mike Yeo or any of the assistants that there was a major divide in the locker room, which is what it's turning out to look like from how people are interpreting John's comments. I don't think Tort's meant to have this be quite this big. I do know that any new coach coming into a situation is going to use this, because who's going to be the person to change that? Him, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's an obvious. You'll notice I saw some comments from Rick Bowness talking about what's going on in Winnipeg. It's a lot of the new coaches are saying we got to change some things. There things have to be changed because that's what new coaches do. And absolutely changes were necessary for this team. Although I think mainly on the ice. I think they need to change their structure, and I think John Tortorella will do that. I do think there needs to be maybe more accountability. So that is an off the ice thing. I think, players need to realize that if you don't follow the system, if you don't adhere to what the head coach is saying, you're going to sit. And I don't think that is off limits for anybody. I don't think it's off limits for Sean Couturier, although he is a coach's dream. But if for some reason Sean Couturier went into a week or two where he just didn't follow directions, I don't think John Tortorella would hesitate to sit him. That's the way he operates. So, the Kevin Hayes, all these players that are leaders that don't see that, and probably you wouldn't expect to see those guys getting sat. They're all fair game with this guy. He's done it. We've seen it in his past. So
totally.
that kind of accountability is probably needed for this team. And I have seen a great attitude from the players in terms of them talking about, Camp Tortorella, as people are calling it, which is about to start, because he does skate them hard and it's a tough camp.
Good.
But they're all looking forward to it. So I think the attitude's good. There's a lot of buzz around the players. There's excitement around the players that I haven't seen in a little while. And so I think Torts will make changes. He will impact things, but I'm hoping it's more on the ice. I didn't really see this team last year. I mean, first of all, many of the players Torts is going to be coaching in about a week weren't even healthy last year. So key players. So it's not even the same team really as last year, as long as they can stay a little more healthy this year. And that's a big step in the right direction for him to begin with. Obviously, he's going to be missing Farabee to start. Ellis, it appears the mystery continues there. And then Bobby Brinks. There's already some injuries to deal with, but last year this team was, guys, they were flat out decimated. And much of what we were talking about before we went on the air, and actually on the air, talking about how there's been so much venting and so forth over the summer about how bad this team is or where the organization is. I mean, I think it's overdone. I see it in all sports. I mean, I see the Dallas Cowboys being said, Dallas Cowboys are done. They lost the game and they lost their quarterback. They are done. We overreact now. I think social media adds to that. And the Flyers have had 2 poor seasons in a row, missed the playoffs back-to-back seasons for the first time since 1992 and 93. So, there is a certain degree of panic, if you will, and also just anger among, fans, and they're able to spout that anger in a lot more ways now with social media. So, but it can turn around pretty quickly. And I think John Tortorella is the guy that can help turn that around. I would have liked to have seen them add some firepower up front. But we'll see if they have enough goal scoring. But I do think Tortorella will bring in structure. He's going to bring in accountability, discipline. And I think they're going to be, as everyone says, tougher team to play against. I think they're going to be a lot to handle physically in terms of playing strong defense. And I think Carter Hart has a chance to have a great year with more structure in front of him than he's had defensively. So there's reasons to be positive. We'll see if they come up with enough offense. But basically, to answer your question, I mean, I didn't see the locker room splintered or rift to be the reason they struggled last year as much as it was injuries. There's some things going on. Splintered is a better word, the word he used. But those go on in a lot of locker rooms. I hesitate to think that was the reason they struggled last year. I think it had a lot more to do with they just didn't have bodies. They lost their top 2 centers for most of the season. They lost their second or maybe best defenseman for the entire season. They lost other players, totaling almost 500-man games to injury. So it would have been tough to see them having a successful year last year.
Yeah, when you lose like those vital pieces like that, Jim, I just think that, I mean, it's hard for any team really to rebound, any team in the NHL. So it's hard. And then obviously with Tortorella being, a new coach, a new voice coming in, they're always going to want to establish a new identity and new structure and things like that on the ice. And then, I mean, you see with certain players losing like that for 2 seasons and just not, being the most successful on the ice, that obviously is going to develop like frustration within a locker room. So I'm sure the players, are happy kind of for this new fresh slate, and it's like an exciting time really for the group to just come together and try to buy into a new system, build a new identity, and just put forth a good first step out of the gate to begin the season, I would say.
Yeah, and that's it's always important. We talk about it every year. Get off to a good start. Really important this year, and maybe not so much even as much as wins and losses, although certainly that you do want to get some wins, but they have to be playing better. They have to look. I mean, we keep hearing about how John Tortorella is going to impact this team in terms of structure and all that. We have to see some of that. Sure. Now, that isn't something that necessarily settles in overnight. And training camp's going to be good in terms of having a full camp with these guys, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be able to get all of the problems they had ironed out during training camp. You have to play games.
It takes time.
But they don't have much time. Yeah. So it's kind of a catch-22 they're in. Normally, a new coach, you want to give them a little time. But given how last year went, given what we're hearing, they need to be at least competitive pretty much from the get-go. They can't go 1-8 to start the year.
No, of course not.
Definitely not.
No,
so we'll see. But the start's always important. I think this year even more so.
Can I hone on something you said there, Jim? And again, I'm like kind of inferring some stuff there, so I want you to correct me if I'm way off here. So obviously you work for the Flyers, right? You work with other people, work for the Flyers. I've worked for Comcast, worked for other companies, right? We talk about this here on this podcast. We agree with a lot of what you just said. And I focus on what you said about the personnel and that being, an issue to a degree. And I also took away that word that you were saying, isolation. And if you think about when the problems here first started, and you go back to the AV years, they started in isolation, and I think about the experience that you've gone through, right? Like, I know you haven't been able to go in the locker rooms, right? Like, I know I haven't, right, as press access, but I think you're kind of on another level. And, do you think that there's maybe a level of isolation that a lot of these players felt in combination with the COVID over the past few years, the leagues getting shut down, the staff getting overturned, the crazy amount of injuries where key players who normally would be running the culture here were absent. And, to add to that, we actually had Owen Tippett on here last week, asked him a question at the end about, when you came here, who kind of stuck out and welcomed you. And I kind of expected a specific name. And I know that there are good people in this locker room. I'm not, inferring anything by that, but he didn't name anybody specific, right? Like by name. And like, obviously he has connections with people, but it made me wonder like how united were things when he showed up at that point, because of all the things that I named. Like, has there been so much isolation and, lack of certain conversations and the overturn and all this stuff that, maybe a lot of the problems are rooted in that. Do you think there's any truth to that?
Well, if you look at the timing of this, I mean, my whole theory on the Flyers is a lot of people are saying they should tear it apart. And I look at that and I said, they already had their rebuild. It was during the Ron Hextall years. And although Hexy wasn't here because of his situation, which really had more to do with other things than just what he was doing with players, I mean, it was starting to look like it was working because if you flash back to 2019, 2020, from mid-November to the pause, the Flyers were tied for second in the NHL in points. They led the NHL in fewest shots allowed. They weren't winning these games with smoke and mirrors. They were outplaying teams. And that's over a 4-month stretch, which is not a streak. That's a healthy part of a season where only one team, Tampa Bay, had more points than them. So, and young players were taking steps forward. Carter Hart was having a good year. You were seeing development with these other players. And so it looked like the long rebuild was finally coming to fruition, right? And then the pause hit. Now, they came out of that in the bubble and did make it to the second round of the playoffs, lost in Game 7, all that. But the bubble, to me, really is isolated. You talk about isolation. That was the isolation where it was all different. But playing at the Wells Fargo Center, playing regular hockey since then, the 2 seasons, even though some of them were with no fans and so forth, they have not been the same team and never were able to rediscover that. I don't think Alain Vigneault rediscovered his mojo after the pandemic. He's a guy, a gregarious guy, likes to, mix and mingle with people. And I don't think isolation hockey worked for him at all. And I think that had something to do with him ending up leaving us. So had, illness in his family and all kinds of things going on. So I don't have a reason for it, but it does go back to that pause where the rebuild, which seemed to be at least leading to something, 4 months of really good hockey, it looked like, hey, they're going to take that next step. They just need to add a piece or two. And then when I think the the bubble was probably a bit of an anomaly because everything was so weird in the bubble. But then look, hey, they made the second round, game 7, not bad. I didn't really like the way they played against Montreal, the Islanders, but they did do enough to get to a game 7 in the second round. But then when they came back, it just wasn't there for the next season. Although, again, they were playing okay, or at least getting wins early in the year. They weren't playing great, but the wins were there. And then COVID hit, and they played some games they shouldn't have had to play with not enough players and so forth, the game in Tahoe and others, and they never could recover from that. And then last year, they got off again. The start wasn't awful win-loss wise last year, if you flash back, and then they started losing players. Ellis, after the third game, he came back for one. Hayes wasn't there in the beginning, and when he came back, he was a shell of himself. Couturier injured himself very early on. He was playing into November, but he was a shell of himself. The injuries just came, and then the coaching change. And if you think back to last year, after the coaching change, couple games, and then they went on a 5-0-1 run under Mike Yeo into the holiday break. Seemed like they were playing a little bit better. They were getting some wins, getting some players back. And then out of the holiday break, what happens? They go on a West Coast swing and they get wrecked with COVID. And, Provorov, Giroux, all the guys that were remaining were all, and they never recovered from that, ended up on another winless streak. And Mike never had a chance. So, I mean, I can go through all the reasons why, but when you total it all up, and people say tear it down, they already went through the rebuild. So what I really think this year boils down to is this is a last shot with this group. They're bringing in a new coach. Obviously, we have to all pray for health. But with a new coach and health, Tony DeAngelo, a nice addition in terms of helping the power play, perhaps. I personally wish they'd gone and gotten a power play performer up front as well. We know there was one available. But the bottom line is they're where they're at now, and this group has now got to show that, okay, we've got a coach. We had a coach before, too, but we got a coach who's new to the situation. We're relatively healthy. You got to do it. And if this year isn't going well, I think the trade deadline will be I think it'll be just an exodus.
Yeah.
I think they'll tear it apart.
That's what we said here, too.
Because I think they're giving that group one more chance because they saw it coming and they had their rebuild already. This is, people talk about Colorado's rebuild. They rebuilt twice.
Yep.
Remember, they drafted Duchesne and O'Reilly. They were part of the original rebuild. They weren't anywhere to be seen when they actually made it to the. Oh. So, I mean, it wasn't.
And great
Colorado
players
just tore it apart and it worked right away. They struggled to get past the second round. They got rid of many of the players that were in the original rebuild. And then, they won the cup last year. It wasn't like this smooth lineup to win the cup.
It's not always a linear thing, I would say, right?
Yeah,
it's almost
like
never.
That.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, if you look around, Pittsburgh had the fortune of having 3 generational players land in their laps when they had their teardown, which really was just they were awful for a long stretch. And they get Crosby, Malkin, Fleury. I mean,
doesn't happen often for most teams.
No, it doesn't. Look at Edmonton. Look at Buffalo. Look at these teams that have been picking high because they were bad for so long.
Yeah.
And I don't see any cup winners outside of Pittsburgh. I really don't. Now you can add Colorado to that, but again,
even
Colorado,
the Rangers aren't good because of their top picks. And I pointed it out to our fan base all year. I was like, it had nothing to do with their bet
because of the acquisitions like Panarin and some of those players. And Shesterkin, by the way, covered up many of their warts last year. They're not going as far as they go without a goalie that just was unbelievable. So
it was.
It's this whole tear it down. Like it goes back to what the Sixers did, and the process didn't work for this. They could win the championship this year, and they might.
They have
a good team. It's not because of the process. It's because Joel Embiid had an injury and they got him. With the pick in that draft, and he's a superhuman player, and then finally able to figure out the chemistry around him, and it works. But the process did not work.
It's about being competitive, right, and continually doing that, and then building that culture up to the point where at least you
could get to the point, and I think the Flyers will feel that point has arrived if this team really struggles again.
Agreed.
John Tortorella is the coach. If they get all banged up again, they have that excuse. But at this point.
Well, at that
they struggle, and I'm saying, at trade deadline, if they're down near the bottom, what choice do you have? But you're going to have a ton of salary cap space next year if you deal some of these guys. Plus, JVR's comes off the and then you're going to go and you're going to try to get draft picks and probably rebuild it. But it might be that this team plays darn well under John Tortorella and is a playoff contending club. So we'll see. That's where they were caught kind of between. If they go out and get Johnny Gaudreau, I mean,
they're in.
Would have had to have been creative.
Yeah.
If they did, they might have had enough to make a playoff run. I'm a little skeptical. Now, they may be able to, if they see this team's playing well and competitive, maybe they're able to go out and get a player, but I just don't know as if there's enough up front. The big thing I'm going to watch guys for here in the early season, really through camp, but more into the season, is they have to find some players to take a step offensively up front, whether it's Owen Tippett, who you had on the show, or when he gets back, Joel Farabee, or if Noah Cates is a much better offensive player than we thought he was going to be, because I was really impressed with how he played.
Yeah, played really well.
And then some of the other guys, Tyson, maybe it's a Forster who comes up but they're going to need, if they're not going to go out and get somebody, they're going to need these young players or these young veterans. Travis Konechny maybe gets back to 24 or maybe more like a 30-goal form. They're going to need some of those guys to do that now, because Claude Giroux is traded and they didn't replace his offense. No. So, you could say they're back where they were before when things were going well and then the pause hit, but they aren't. They don't have Claude Giroux.
This is
they don't have
something
Jake
different.
Voracek either.
Yeah,
exactly.
But they do have Cam Atkinson, for him. So there is a trade-off there. They got nothing outside of Owen Tippett for Claude Giroux that's on this team right now. So, is Tippett going to give you Giroux production? No. But they do need Tippett to become a legitimate 20 to 30 goals.
I
definitely. I think, though, what the opportunity kind of breeds, just a sense of optimism. You don't necessarily exactly know where a lot of these younger guys might slot in, how they might perform. So with that and with that opportunity, you never know, I guess, where they're going to go throughout the season, how they might, take a step forward, things like that. So I think that's a thing that fans can kind of look forward to, because obviously we've seen a lot of negativity about the team surrounding the franchise, things like that. But with the young guys, there does breed, optimism there, I think. There's
not a team in any of the major sports that has two non-playoff seasons in a row where the fan base doesn't think the sky is falling and everything. Yeah. And they have every right to be upset. There were two seasons, especially last year, that were very disappointing. But I cautioned them that last year they had a full roster for one game.
Pretty much.
Even in that game, Couturier was already a shell of himself by then, and Hayes was just making himself
and Ellis.
Hayes' first game was Ellis's last.
Yeah.
Couturier was gone shortly thereafter. So they really never had all those guys healthy, playing together. And a lot of teams probably will tell you that, but it wasn't just that. It was all three of them pretty much, and then Farabee, and then later on Hart, Atkinson. I mean, these were important players who were out. So we can think back to how dreadful last year was. You look deeper into the numbers, they were in almost every game. A couple were outs, but not many. It was something like 83% of the games they were within one goal in the third period.
They just didn't have the horses in certain cases,
they
right?
Didn't.
With those guys injured.
John Couturier talked about that when he met with the media yesterday. He said, we just have to learn how to finish games better. Now, I think they can do that.
Change that.
What's that?
He alone changes that. I mean, even statistically,
he certainly changes games when they're up a goal. That's for darn sure.
Yeah,
100%.
So good that way. And you hope that some of the other guys might help them as well as Coots when they're down a goal, because they were down a goal in a lot of those games. They were just not quite there, but they weren't getting necessarily blown out. They were in a lot of those games. So that leads me to believe that a coach like John Tortorella might be the difference in some of those games if they get the special teams going. Because if the special teams were even mediocre last year, they win a lot of those one-goal games.
Dude, that was the worst special teams I've ever seen.
It was terrible.
It was the worst I've ever seen. A combination of both. I've never seen both hit that low of a level.
Yeah. The power play to me was
well, it was worse since the opening season of the franchise. So
it was bad. And again, didn't have a whole lot of weapons for much of the season. Although they had Claude Giroux for much of that, and one of the top power play production players in the league, the top, in fact, through the last 10 years, there's a power play point. So they had him, and they had other. But what they really missed and never found was that quarterback from the top. Depending on how Rocky Thompson is going to run the power play here, but if it runs from the top, Tony DeAngelo is the real deal.
Yeah, he is.
Really
his
good.
signing, of course, there's the off the ice controversy and all that. But as far as the hockey end of things, it's an under the radar signing. At the time, I thought it was him, and then they're going to also get Gaudreau, and I'm like, this team could be
That's
pretty
pretty
good.
good. Yeah.
But even with just Tony, I think that he's going to help the power play because he has great mobility. Ghost like that way, but I think he's actually a little bit better than Ghost, certainly in his own zone. Not that he's going to win a defensive defenseman award or anything, but he's a little bit stronger than Ghost defensively in terms of just battling and such. And offensively, he's kind of like peak Ghost. So I think the guy's had 50 points twice in his career, and probably would have.
His analytics were top 4 in the league last year offensively.
Yeah, and he's with Slavin. I mean, Slavin, you can play with Slavin, and it's going to help you.
Yeah.
But I say to all those people, and there's some people I really respect who cover the Flyers who are just so down on him, and I said he was plus 30 last year. Yeah, he's playing with Slavin, but Rod Brind'Amour was a pretty good coach. Had him playing with Slavin, meaning he was out against the top players from the other team, and he was still plus 30.
He's also never had a bad season in the NHL where you can look at Ghost and say he had some bad seasons. You don't have that in D'Angelo's past. He's been the same player every single season from what I can
the only season that didn't go well was because it was off the ice stuff.
Right,
so
exactly.
he has to be good that way, has to stay out of trouble, and all that. But on the ice, Tony's a really good addition. I think he will help the power play. We have to see what the new assistant coach has in mind for the power play, what Bradshaw has in mind for the kill, and all this. But these are two guys who have pretty good reputations in terms of those units. So, Torts will take care of the 5-on-5 and the approach there and the shot blocking and build the house around the goalie. The two other coaches hopefully improve those special teams numbers. And if you go back to what I was saying about them being in a lot of games last year, all of a sudden some of those losses become wins, and it doesn't take much to be in playoff contention. I still think they do need to find offense, but I think they're going to be a better team. I do.
Yeah, especially we just, I guess, kind of publicly found out that Coots and Hayes are both 100%. You kind of referenced that earlier. Considering they're both in the lineup, what do you think about them as a 1-2 punch? And do you think that they are healthy? Do you expect, again, they kind of had that recovery over the offseason and also Hayes last year, which was great that he didn't have to come in, cold. Do you kind of see that as enough at this point with those two?
I hope so, because I'm a little concerned about Coots because late last year he was skating with the team, as you recall, and was told that if these games meant anything, he might actually be playing. And then he talked about how he had some setbacks over the off season when he was working out. The back is a tricky thing.
For sure.
You get to my age, it's really a tricky thing. And Coots is 30. It will be 30, and this year's age 30 season. That back injury is a concern. So we hope he's 100%. I'm pretty confident in Hayes that they finally figured out what was going on after some mistakes, quite frankly. Yeah. And he came back 3 times and just wasn't right. But finally, at the end, he was, and we saw that he was playing better. But even Kevin Hayes at 100% is going to have to follow John Tortorella's system. And there are a couple players in this team that are, I would say, freelancers to some degree. Kevin Hayes, Travis Konecny, some of these players who are, they're very talented, they're skilled, so they try things that might not mesh with Tortorella's system. So it's going to be very important to watch the impact Torts has on those guys and how they accept them. I mean, Kevin's saying all the right things, and I know the guy wants to win, and the guy's loved in the locker room. He's a great human being. So, I mean, it's just a matter of, can he adjust to Tortorella's system? And then, of course, the same could be said, I guess, about TK. Although I think TK has really matured in the last year or two. He's a father now, and I think he just wants to win. So I think it can happen there. And you'll be surprised if Tortorella has a positive impact on 3 or 4 of these guys who really struggled last year. All of a sudden, this team's pretty good. So there is this air of excitement. It's kind of the unknown, right? We don't really know what we're going to see here, but there is a chance this team could be really competitive. If it goes the other way, like I said, I think we're looking at an exodus around the trade deadline into the offseason. But But if
Kind of
they,
Bedard.
if a couple things go right, and again, I think there's a possibility, and he has to stay healthy for sure. 100% has to stay healthy because they don't have much behind him. But Carter Hart has the chance
I
to
was just
have
about to bring it.
a really good year with a system in front of him. And I'm not saying that Felix Sandstrom can't get it done. Everyone's talking about the Groswich, but I look at Sandstrom as a guy who got a couple chances last year and played pretty well.
I think they're going to give him the chance.
Yeah,
I would
personally.
agree. Yeah.
Let me ask you something.
I think I tried to make him Groswich the goalie. That's not his name. But he'll be there probably to start. But if Sandstrom has a great camp, I mean,
they're going to give it to outperforms in camp. Obviously, I would say.
Yeah.
I mean, look, the way I kind of see it about Carter Hart, the team while he's been here has he's had one good year where the team has been good around him, and we referenced it earlier. But ultimately, from what I have seen, and again, I'm 35, I haven't seen every single Flyers goalie, and I'm sure you can name a couple, but like outside of Bob, who won a couple of Vezinas, I have not seen a more talented goalie in a Flyers uniform. Like whether he'll hit those numbers, I think a lot of that matters the way the team plays around him. And we see that with there are other very good goalies, but you kind of don't find out are great until they go to the right situation or whatever happens. But I do really believe in Carter Hart and his age. I agree with you. I think if we can actually play well as a team, I think the league should be talking about Carter Hart.
Well, the structure is vital, really, Yariv. Like, I mean, if you're any team and you're looking at the way the Flyers played defensively the last two seasons, I mean, it was almost structureless to a sense. So I think that's a real main important thing of Tortorella and just with his system is that it implements structure, but it also implements a sense of like accountability that, as a team, no matter who you are, and even some players were alluding to it, like Kevin Hayes and Couturier, like no matter if you are a rookie or if you've played 10 years in the league, you're going to be held to that, same standard. And I think that's a good thing, obviously, for the team based on like where they've been and moving forward, because to build a winning culture, that's ultimately what you would need, right? A whole team buying into a system, buying into a culture, buying into an identity of, okay, this is how we're going to play, and this is our standard every night that we're at least going to meet, right? And that, I think that was an issue, I guess, the last two seasons where you see the Flyers, in a sense, sometimes you see them come out and they wouldn't really, have all the energy, have the best starts. And I think with Tortorella, maybe some of that kind of changes just based on how he, works them in camp, but also gets them prepared, right?
Yeah, I mean, Cam Atkinson spoke to this, that with Torts, you either go his way or you go the other way. And they'll have to accommodate players who aren't willing to ride along. But I think given what's happened here the last 2 years, the players who were here, and obviously the players who weren't, came here knowing Tortorella is going to be the coach, so can't imagine them having a problem with it. But if there are players that were here and just don't like the way, the tough love approach and all that, they'll have to accommodate them. But it's his team for sure, and it is his way or the highway. So we'll see how that goes. I'm pretty sure, given how the team played the last 2 years, for anybody that was here, they'll be willing to look.
They should be susceptible.
Yeah.
They should be. And I actually talked about that I think he's the right coach for this group right now, right? If you put Tortorella, and I think it's kind of why it didn't work in Vancouver. If you were to put Tortorella's attitude with a team that has a bunch of star players on it, I don't know if it would go as well. Like, I think it would be a lot of challenge. It'd be like, oh, well, we already know what we're doing. We have a way that works here. And then you're coming in trying to challenge. But I think for a situation where things are not working well, a guy who is a challenging figure, I think it is what you need. You need a guy to kind of remind people to challenge, like go to TK and be like, why are you not a 30 goal scorer? Like, give me a reason. Find a good reason to tell me that you're not a better player in the NHL. Even if, it's kind of an asshole question to some degree, just to challenge him, right? To be like, there's more there.
Yeah.
I want to see it. Right.
Well, and he can be,
yes,
the term you used. I mean, there's no doubt, he's going to, the post-game press conferences are going to be very entertaining. You're not going to want to miss those.
Yeah.
But more to the point, and more to what's going to impact the team is going to be how he treats the players. And the one thing about John is he's fiercely loyal and defensive about his players. That's how he usually gets into the stuff in the post-game press conferences, usually defending his players. And one thing for sure, you're going to know where you stand. There's not going to be any question as to what he's expecting of you. So it really is going to be, it falls upon the players, and we'll see how they respond. But I do really think that they have nowhere else to go. These players, the ones who have been here for a while. I mean, come on, I fully anticipate they'll be on board. Now there will be some bumps, no doubt about it. But I think that's it's really kind of what they needed. And if he considers that the culture change he's talking about, because I don't think we've had a coach with this tough of an approach. I'm trying to think.
Mike Keenan, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, that's
Hitch
going all the way back. That's probably the last one. I mean, Hitch could be tough, at times, but
not to the level of the Tortorella.
No, and sometimes publicly. So Hitch would do a lot of stuff, and Hitch would also use the media to his advantage, but he wouldn't necessarily do that in a harsh way. You just get little comments out there that he knew the player would have. He was more harsh one-on-one with players.
It's kind of that.
Keenan's probably the last one that had this.
Well, the movie Miracle, where they do the whole Herb Brooks thing. I don't know how much of that is like accurate, right? I know some of it is. But I do know his kind of attitude was, hey, he kind of changed the tone of the team, but he did have this whole attitude that we're going to be the more in shape than the Russian teams, right? And I'm hearing what I've talked about it on here. Like, I am very into physical fitness. Like, I run 25 miles at this point a week. Like, I love it.
God bless you.
Yeah. So, but again, but in my opinion, I want to understand the mind of an athlete. I'm not an athlete. Like, I'm not even in a realm with these people.
I don't know, right? 25 miles a week. That's pretty good.
But that's my mindset, right? That created that. So that's why I'm so into this. And I love the idea of a guy who is setting that standard. And in my opinion, like you said, there is more talent here than people realize. And I think if you are the most conditioned team in the league, if you are the best team in the league at that is what you can control. You can't control everything else, but you can control it in being the hardest working team and the one that literally has the most endurance the entire year, which I know
that'll be helpful. Like, think about third periods or back-to-back games where that really plays into a factor. You pick up those extra points. That could be critical, really.
Let me ask you this. Have the Flyers been that team, known as that team? Like, a team, I think, when I think of that, I think of Rod Brindamore's team, right? Yeah. Like, that's a guy that he lives it. You'd be embarrassed to run with him, right? Otherwise. And I have a feeling that Tortorella carries some of that. And that's what I'm really excited about, is like, the fact that he's like saying to our players straight up, like, this is going to be the hardest camp you've ever had. Even if I don't even know if that's true, but to have them come with the mindset of like, oh, this is going to be one of the toughest experiences of my life. Like, you're already going to work harder than ever.
The standards, the standards already being set to a degree, if you think about it, even before it really begins, right? And I think
I've talked to enough players who've been to his camps. It's true.
Yeah,
yes, but that's great.
It's very true. This is not all hype. This is good. They're gonna get skated. They're gonna get skated a lot, and they're going to do a lot of drills, I'm sure, about defensive zone coverage.
Yeah, battle drills.
Not necessarily fun battle drills for sure. These are not necessarily fun drills. So, they're going to get their tails. They're going to get worked.
But to your point, you can't do this during the season.
No.
It has to be something that the players do in the off season and then do in the preseason. Because during the season, it's all about maintaining your energy levels, right, and recovery, right, which I know he's super into. I've heard him talk about it before this. He's the reason people change their skates, right, their morning routines. I look at that. I can't help but think that there are so many guys on this team that would benefit from something like that. And I do believe it's there. And I think if you create that pattern here, right? And I know the young guys were saying, I was at a press conference, I heard Zayd Wisdom say it, I heard Alex Bum, like all these guys who are barely even in the organization are listening to what Tortorella is saying about being the best shape of your life. Now they're doing
Not a coincidence.
The trickle-down effect and that happening year after year, that's where real change comes. And I think that's what I'm hoping for. Like, ultimately,
that's the identity that you're looking for, really. Too, right?
Jim,
we have not had a team play. See, there's another theory out there espoused by one writer in particular that the Flyers are stuck in the past, and that's the reason why they haven't made made a run in the playoffs outside of the bubble in 10 years. And actually they got too far away from their identity
I agree.
during the rebuild. Hexie did a great job getting this team out of cap hell, getting a whole bunch of draft picks. Hit some, didn't hit with others, but the bottom line is he brought them in. But in so doing, they went through 2 or 3 coaches who really didn't stress what you're talking about, not only the physical fitness, but the battle side of it, that you're not going to be outworked and you're not going to get out hit. You're going to block more shots, all that kind of stuff. They haven't really had that now for a little while. Dave Hackstall, Lane Vigneault, I don't think that was part of their MO.
Probably since Laviolette, I would say.
And
right?
yeah, Laviolette playing with Jam, there's certainly some of that. Craig Berube a little, but for the most part, this is a team. I mean, Craig Berube, you've seen what he's done in St. Louis. His team plays with that.
Yeah, they play hard.
And so Craig Berube I don't think at that time with the rebuild kind of taking, really just starting, he didn't really have the horses, but so I really think they got away from their identity more than their identity and what they are, and the Broad Street Bullies and all that. They're stuck in the past. I just don't see that. I look at the situation. It's so easy to say that, right? Because for a while they were. I mean, they were trying to, out of the Armageddon lockout, they got bigger instead of faster, and that did set them back. And they had a terrible season 2 years out of that break. But
Mike
Holmgren came in, made a whole bunch of moves, and got them right back into contention, not by being the Broad Street Bullies, but by bringing in some talent. And then that talent started to age a little bit, and they went to this whole rebuild that Ed Snyder, and as it turned out into his final days, showed patience that had not been something that was part of his MO. He had always wanted to be good every year, and let's get whatever the best free agent is. And it's just because he wanted to win so badly. He had that passion. Well, perhaps the toughest time in his life, because he saw the end of his life coming, he was patient, and he stuck with Hexie for that rebuild. And as I said, they got through that rebuild, but as they were doing that, they weren't really staying tough. They weren't staying big. And I think they might have gotten a little bit away from that. Now they've tried to get back to that a little bit with Delorier, and obviously McEwen's here, and some Ristolainen and some of that. So we'll see. But I don't believe the problem the Flyers have had over the last 10 years has been that they were stuck in the past. I just don't see that at all. It's what we talked about earlier. It was starting to happen. The pause hit. They just didn't seem to recover it from there. We'll see this year with John Tortorella trying to guide this group of players. It's not the same exact group, obviously, anymore. And there's no Claude Giroux. That's a big piece missing. But we'll see how successful John is about getting this group to play that style with some of the guys they've brought in. And if they do, the fans are going to like it, because that physical style of play, if there's such thing as a basketball team playing physically, or certainly there is a football team or a baseball team being a gritty team, this town loves that stuff.
Yeah,
and
infectious
so
almost.
I think they'll like it, but they're going to need some wins along with that, though, to satisfy people.
For sure. I'm wondering, Jim, like with the new systems and things like that, do you think a lot of players coming in earlier, and I mean, a lot of the guys in the press conference like Couturier, Hayes, Atkinson, Sanheim over the last few days have said, everybody's kind of almost been back around September 1st. Do you think that's a good thing, that it's going to simplify the process for the team just to dedicate themselves to that system and also supporting each other as teammates? Do you think that's like a good sign going into the season, would you say?
I think it's great. I mean, it obviously shows you a couple things. One, they're embarrassed.
Yeah.
What happened last year. Two, the Tortorella, the Tortorella, rumors of what's going to happen at camp. They want to be prepared, or fall behind. So that all works. It should. He's going to have this group's attention for sure. And then we see how that goes. I'm going to be watching myself through camp for players to emerge. And this could be veterans, youngsters. It really, there's no qualification for this, but players who seem like they are going to emerge under John Tortorella. And it could be a Travis Konechny. It could be a Cam York. I mean, I don't know. It could be a Tyson Forster.
Yeah.
I mean, A guy who's sneaky on this is Isaac Radcliff.
We were talking about him the
I was
last
going to bring
couple of
him
weeks.
up.
Yeah,
please,
I
go
think
ahead.
he's a guy who can play the way Torts wants you to play, but I also think he has way more skill than a fourth line player. Now, he might be a fourth line player that you then put on your top power play unit or something like that. But he's a guy that's he's running out of chances. Same with Tanner Lazinski. Same with Wade Allison. These are all intriguing.
You got to see what these guys have, right?
Yeah, and under a coach where Wade's another freelancer to some degree, so he's another guy that we'll see if it meshes with Torts' system. I mean, Lazinski's kind of a perfect Tortorella player, so it's going to be really interesting to see. But I think we need to see some of these players emerge. We definitely need to see it. Whether it happens or not remains to be seen. But Ivan Provorov, what will Tortorella's impact be on?
I'm curious. What's your opinion on that? Specifically Provorov.
Well, I mean,
and Torts.
Provy's a very proud individual who has his strong opinions as to how the game should be played. And most of it's that the game should be played the right way. So I think he probably will fit in well with Tortorella. He's not a guy who wants to take risks offensively at the blowing something up defensively. That's where Tony's going to have to rein things in probably a little bit, because he is a guy that will make that risky pass in the defensive zone to try to spring a player. I'm not sure that's going to fit with Torts' system. But I think Provorov's problems tend to be giveaways that are so, like, how did he give that puck away in that situation? You wonder, he's just trying to do too much. So I think if Torts can get him to just rein it in a bit, and again, if he's paired with D'Angelo, if Ellis is still hurt, or if Ellis comes back, certainly he'll have a really good partner. Maybe he can rein it back just a bit and then be better. Yeah. So we'll see where that goes. I mean, I still talk to scouts around the league, and they still think he's a absolute number one defenseman. I think something's got to be unlocked.
I'd say the same thing. I just think with Provorov in last season, and not really maybe playing to the the level we thought, I guess. I would just say that, I mean, a lot of it maybe could be structure, and Tortorella is known to kind of fix things like that. You don't have the options as a defenseman, and you don't have your forwards coming back and opening themselves up to you for options that can kind of, hurt you as somebody making an outlet pass and things like that. So I think with that, maybe that'll help Provorov too.
Also,
but he's a workhorse. He'll love him, right? That's the
workhorse is what I was about to bring up, though. If you think back to last year, Proby actually played pretty well down the stretch.
Yeah, with Cam York. Yeah,
and his minutes were down. So Proby wants to play. He's told me he wants to play 30 minutes a night.
Yeah,
but it might be much better for Proby to play 23 or 24 minutes a night,
which is still a lot.
22. Yeah, maybe even 22. And it's possible if Travis Sanheim has taken that next step. And D'Angelo is a big addition, and they can, Sanheim, Ristolainen pair had some good moments. If Ellis is back for sure, there's a way to rein Provorov's numbers back. I don't think he's a number one power play quarterback, and they've got that with D'Angelo. So he might be the number two power play quarterback. In my mind, it would be Cam York, but I mean, we'll see. But maybe they take Provorov off the power play, and if he can deal with that and accept that, that's where he loses some of that ice time. And he's obviously your number one penalty kill defenseman, and really one pair at even strength. He's still going to get plenty of minutes, but maybe he's not on the power play. Maybe they go with two defensemen on the power play. I don't know. But you try to put together two units of four forwards. That second units, you're going to have somebody you're not expected to be on a power play. So.
And I mean, Provorov has a really good shot too on the power play, so it could be something they want to try, right? Get him onto the right side, and he opens it up a little bit.
He's just got to get rid of the shot, though.
Yeah, for sure.
To me, Ryan Ellis that's what he's so good at so many things.
The release,
but getting the puck through, and it's never. Well, I shouldn't say never, but it's rarely a big slap shot. It's almost always a wrist shot.
It's deceptive,
little snap
too.
shot, and he gets it through. And that's what we weren't getting with Ghost. Mainly with Ghost, it was going wide. You get the shots off. And Provy takes a little bit longer to get rid of it. So we'll see. Provorov brings so much. If you get him right, I mean, he's a great two-way defenseman. And all of a sudden the defense score could really look good.
Well, so let me ask you something, Joe. I'm sorry to cut you off, but you look at the age, and I bring this up to people. I think people kind of forget, because he's been here for so long. But Provorov is the youngest defenseman on this team that's not Cam York, who's a rookie, essentially. He's younger than Sanheim. He's been doing this quite a bit. And I look at other guys like Konechny, and I look at, pretty much any guy in their mid-20s. I've been watching this team long enough. Every single great player on this team, not all players are capable of doing this, but there is a certain point where they hit in their mid-20s where they tend to stagnate a little bit. And then all of a sudden, one year it just clicks. They take their work ethic or whatever it is, or they walk into the coach's office and say, I want more, like in Sean Couturier's case. But there's always kind of like this, not always, but there can be this moment of where their game hits another level. We saw with Jake Voracek, a lot of it happens mid-20s. I mean, I think this is Tortorella's, one of his main focuses should be, why isn't Ivan Provorov undoubtedly a number one defenseman? Why are we even talking about taking him off the power play when at one point we saw so much promise in every element of his game, which is why we characterize him that way? I'm not saying it will happen. I've seen a lot of players fall short, but what is Tortorella going to really fix about Provorov? Like you said, it's almost like he's already doing that. And I kind of see Provorov wearing an A just off the way just the sheer fact of his preparation for a game. And I don't know. I do see the option of taking him off, but I also understand why coaches are so persistent to keep him up there, because you look at everything he brings and you're like, why are you not the best, by far the best defenseman on this team? Because you were at one point, and something's happened. And I don't know. I guess I kind of see it where I don't want to give up on that yet. I feel like he's in his mid-20s.
Still a young player. Yeah.
If we can get him to that next level, his prime should be kind of now, 25 to 32 as an adult. I don't know. Do you see any of that, Jim?
I think the numbers are changing, though, in terms of prime downward in the NHL. Not as much for the defensemen, more so for the forwards. 26 this year. He'll turn 26. That's middle age now in the NHL, even for defensemen. So he's no longer, in my mind, and neither really are Sanheim and Konechny, youngsters, that's for sure. They're veterans. But Sanheim, we've seen some progression lately, and Konechny, he made really good early progression. Is not only stagnated, maybe dropped off a little bit, at least in terms of his offensive production. He had some good moments last year. He had career highs in assists, I believe, or close to it. And and he led the team in scoring. But I mean, it's not like we're looking at guys where they haven't had. All three of those guys have had moments where they've really looked good, and then they have moments where they haven't. And with Provorov, I'm not 100% he is a number one power play guy. He takes a little too long making decisions for my liking, as well as getting rid of the shot. But who's to know, with a completely different style power play, maybe they run it instead of off the wing, because they don't have a Claude Giroux anymore to do that. It filters off the top. Now, I'm always going to think D'Angelo's better suited for that than Proby, just because of his lateral movement and his
facilitation,
very quick with his decisions and so forth. Proby's a very intuitive player, and sometimes I think he's so intuitive it slows down his playmaking. When he was young, in his first to second year, he made some plays getting the puck out of the zone that were so fast. Little redirection tip plays. I'm not seeing many of those anymore, so that could reemerge, and maybe it emerges on the power play too. So all bets are off, guys, this year, because it's a completely different staff, and it's going to be a completely different power play. And maybe if it starts up top, Provorov's more comfortable. But what I saw of him as a power play performer last year, he just didn't have that quickness, and it wasn't physical quickness; it was the mental quickness, the quickness to make the plays and all that, to be my power play quarterback. But that could change with a new system and a new coach.
I just saw from so many players that I don't think it's exclusive to him though either. How many players?
Yeah, when he had the puck a lot more.
That's also true.
I mean, if that guy up top's moving it quickly, everybody else tends to move it more quickly. That's why they call him the quarterback, because he kind of starts everything.
Yeah.
So we'll see. I mean, I'm not saying he can't do it. What I am saying is he's their best defensive defenseman in terms of puck moving and all that when he's on. And, if that Provorov comes back and, okay, maybe he's on the second power play unit or whatever, you got a really good player.
Yeah.
And then Sanheim was a really good player for much of last year. And if Ellis is healthy, he's a really good player. And Tony DeAngelo is going to bring some really good things. And Ristolainen, it's a bit of a wild card there, but he certainly played well with Sanheim at times. So, and Justin Braun's a solid guy. And Cam York, I think people are almost forgetting about Cam York. He's
so good.
He's another guy who could run the power play. So there's some talent there. There's also talent up front. I mean, Joel Farabee, when he gets healthy, maybe he just thrives under John Tortorella and becomes
Definitely
a 30
possible.
to 35 goal scorer. I mean, there's potential for all that, but I hesitate to say, okay, as we sit here on September 13th, I mean, is John Tortorella going to be like this magic witch doctor and come in and everybody's going to be better?
No,
it's probably not going to happen like that either. But you hope that he has an impact, and the fact that they're playing with more structure, I think it impacts Carter Hart the most. But you hope that it impacts other players too, and then they all raise their game. Here, my whole theory going into the offseason, I'm not sure if when I talked to you guys last we went over this. I doubt it. I think it was before the season, wasn't it? Last year when we last talked. But I had like a bullet list of things they had to do. Number one was get the right coach, and I think they absolutely did that. 2 for next year is they got to be healthier, and we won't know about that.
Yeah,
but they've done what they can. Or they've made some changes with the staff apparently, and what they can there, and they're obviously going to follow the numbers and the analytics in terms of trying to keep these guys healthy. 3, and this is so important, and we will watch this. But the young players, as I mentioned earlier, and even including the young veterans, have to take a bigger bite out of the team. I generalize, not every single one of them is going to, but a good number, 5, 6 of those guys, your Konecnys, your Sanheims, your Provorovs, and then getting younger, your Cates, your Yorks, your maybe Forster, your Tippett's, those players have to take a bigger bite out of the team. There's no question that has to happen. My other bullet point, which unfortunately did not happen, was I wanted, because, and I thought they were going to do it because Chuck had mentioned at the end of the year, we need more high-end talent. And again, full disclosure, Johnny Gaudreau's dad coached my son in high school. I know the family.
Yeah.
I know how much he wanted to play here and was actually expecting to play here. So I was shocked when they didn't even try, mainly because they just couldn't get the salary cap to work.
Yeah.
And, and I've had even my own broadcast partner, Keith Jones, tell me, well, he wasn't going to get them to the cup. And I said, how do you know? We don't know the impact John Tortorella is going to have on the team. But one thing you do know, when it comes to the playoffs, you have to have high-end offensive players
to win, especially now.
Yeah, and they aren't necessarily the ones who do all the scoring, but they have to draw the attention of the other team so that other people can do the scoring.
Yeah, for sure.
And I'm not sure the Flyers have that. Now, they might have that with a Farabee taking another step, with a Tippett taking another step, with a Forster.
Well, it remains to be seen at this point, obviously, yeah.
Yeah, so a lot of maybes there. But my bullet point plan, and you could say Tony DeAngelo was, and I believe he is, a high-end talent that they added. But I was obviously referring to upfront high-end talent. So they didn't do that. Maybe they couldn't do that. Maybe they were asking for 2 first-round picks to take some of these salaries off their laps. I don't know the answers there, so I can't comment. But, without, if we were talking Johnny Gaudreau right now with this team, we're saying, okay, now they got a new system with Rocky Thompson. They got DeAngelo on the back line and Johnny Gaudreau up front. This power play's got some potential. We're now talking like the new system and Tony, and hopefully somebody emerges that can do the scoring up front.
And getting worse.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's where we're at with so much uncertainty around John Tortorella.
Yeah. So let's go to the last topic because we're getting here around the hour, and really want to talk about the fact that we have a rookie game coming up on Friday. And we didn't really talk too much about young guys, but there's obviously some names going around. You've seen a lot of these guys come through the system too, Jim, which I think is great, right? Because you get a look at them kind of every year. And right now, you talked about some battles, you talked about some players coming up, and some players that are going to be available. We talked about him a little bit, but I do want to talk about him a little bit more. But Noah Cates specifically, there was, you mentioned earlier, like maybe he is better than we think. Like he came in, and I always hesitate because sometimes guys come in, they have a really good showcase like at the end of the year or something, and then they never really hit that again. And we saw guys in preseason do that stuff at times. But something about Noah Cates is, he came in, he fit in immediately. It was a benefit immediately. He scored immediately. Like he just seemed like he was like you couldn't fit a player easier into our lineup.
You could tell the hockey sense is there.
Yeah.
It's tremendous hockey sense. I that's really what jumped out at me. I mean, he's a coach's dream.
Yeah.
So, he needs to get a little stronger. Hopefully he did during the off season, but he knows where to go. The puck follows him. And,
it shows.
They say that, when the puck follows around, that's really what it means. They know where the puck's going. Right. So, he's really smart. I think he's the kind of guy that will have a coach really in his camp. So he's going to get opportunities. I don't see him as a top line player. You never know, never say never. But I do see him as a guy that can play in the top 9 consistently and be a very good player. So, I didn't know what to expect. I mean, I had heard all the hockey sense scouting reports and I'd watched him play in college, but it's a totally different game. So, and then I saw his first game. Okay, sometimes they look good in their first game. Then and that was in Minnesota where he was all pumped anyhow. And then second game looked pretty good. Then third game, fourth game, it's like he's getting better. He really did play well. And then he ended with some really good games. So, he's going to have the rookie wall thing maybe where he's not played this many games. I'm not putting it all on Noah Cates to say he's going to turn this thing around by any stretch, but I do think he's a piece. As far as the rookie game, I mean, Forster's the guy I really want to see. I love this guy's ability to put the puck in the net, and the Flyers are going to need that. Yeah. So, and I've seen glimpses in preseason, the 2 camps he was part of, where I think this guy could be special, not just good.
Yeah,
I think he's got special talent to score goals. It's whether the rest of his game is going to be up to snuff, right? But I'm really looking forward to watching him. He's healthy for the first time in a while. Hopefully he stays that way. So those are 2 guys. Some of the rookies. Elliot Denoye is a guy. He might be kind of a Cates kind of player, to be honest with you. I think he's going to be one of these guys who's kind of a Swiss Army knife, and he's
almost like a Lawton, maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how obviously he was used by the World Junior team. So we'll see, but he's got numbers that indicate he's got some skill too. And like I said, Isaac Radcliffe's another one that's out there that I'd be interested to see. People are kind of sleeping on him now because
I think he has to make the team out of camp. I'm sorry to cut you off, but
he has to. He has to make the team himself. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, he has a chance.
If he doesn't, I worry that he won't be here because if we have to pass him through waivers,
right.
I can't see a team passing up.
I'm with you there.
So
I'm with you, and that could happen because when they went out and got Delorier and then re-signed McEwen,
the competition is a lot more now. Right?
Well, your 4th line wingers aren't there anymore.
Yeah.
So, I'm Patrick Brown's probably going to be in the middle. So
I kind of suspect, and I'm sorry to cut you off, that a lot of the roster decisions we're going to see to start the year are going to confuse people. And I think a lot of it is going to be gymnastics for these contracts where they have to get compliant contract wise, and then also deal with Ellis's LTIR. And I think we're going to see like Radcliff make the team day one because they don't want to lose him, and they'll pass or they'll drop Allison, even if he looks ready, and Lazinski if they look ready, regardless, because they're waiver exempt, and they're just going to do all of that to start the year. And we're going to see some weird stuff. And I don't think we should expect that the lineup that we see at the beginning of the year will be the lineup that the Flyers even roster 80% of the season. I'm kind of
never is anyhow because
right.
But
especially in that bottom 6.
I mean, Wade Allison is another one though, isn't it?
He's so good, and he's good.
Time. I don't really need to see Wade Allison playing in the minors.
No, definitely not.
He's just risking an injury down there, So I mean, and Lazinski's a guy who might really fit in towards his system.
Yeah.
So who knows? But they need, another guy. How can I forget? Morgan Frost is the guy who really has to have. I mean, how will he fit with Torts? Maybe this is the guy. Maybe this is. Torts' guy that he really has a good impact on because, that 3C spot right now, and Scott Lawton can always fill in, be there. But now the way it is in the NHL, you really look for offense from all your lines, but especially, your top 3 lines. It's not like that third line's just a checking line.
Yeah.
So, and we all know there's so much skill there with Morgan. He's such a great kid that we're all kind of rooting for him, but he's got not many more chances left either. So that's another one. So there's a lot of the young guys. You know, I just mentioned 3 or 4 that I'm looking to, not just the rookie game, but into camp, and then of course in camp, I just want to see everybody. How are Hayes connecting all these players, adjusting to Torts, and how, you know, just to watch how Torts manages it. And obviously, most importantly, hope that everybody stays healthy through camp, so, or gets healthy in the case of Ryan Ellis. But I think we're looking at longer term for him, and obviously we are for Farabee and Brink. So we'll see.
Fingers crossed. And I guess this is something I've brought up to everybody so far, because it's been very interesting to me, because I try to listen to every podcast. So does Vasili. And the one thing I hear, like, is that the Flyers have not drafted any top end talent. Like, I hear it as a definitive statement. Which one, I hate that in general, because you have no idea what you drafted at first. But I look at Cutter Gauthier. Obviously, he's absent from this, you know, for NCAA reasons. We're missing a lot of the NCAA guys. Guy's drafted number 5 overall. He's obviously a top pick. The tools are all there. I know that the draft is unknown, all that, and we didn't get the guy that some people thought we should get, whatever. I don't really go by that anymore. But I look at a top 5 pick. Where is your mindset with the Flyers? Do you see him as part of that future? Obviously, we don't get a taste of him here. Saw a little bit of him in the 3-on-3 tournament. I loved what I saw. I think he has all the tools. Vasili and I talked about this quite a bit. But where do you think, Jim? Like, is he exciting to you at this point?
He is. He was my choice. I wanted him. I was happy. I thought they might go with a defenseman because, you know, Juracek was there. And but I was happy to see I think they've got young defensemen, and maybe even another one now with the Swede. I'm trying to blank.
Emil Andre.
Yeah, I mean, so, you know, they might have even more depth than they thought. I'm not giving up on Zamula yet as a guy who can play at the NHL level. So I was looking up front, and Gauthier, he was my choice. Now, how much have I seen him? Not much. I was going on scouting reports and so forth. But he certainly seems to fit what they need, a little more size up front with skill. We'll see. But the one thing, guys, I know fans do this in all sports now because there's so much information out there, but prospects are suspects. Yeah. They really are. Sure. We just don't know. And the Flyers wouldn't be getting that tag that you said they're getting earlier if Nolan Patrick had been the player that he was expected to be by everybody in the hockey world, I will say. And whether it's injuries or whatever, it never happened. So if you get a second overall and don't make it work, that really sets you back. And it didn't work. Now there's this all stuff that they were thinking about Heiskanen. It wasn't, by the way, Makar. It was Heiskanen they were thinking about. And, you know, that all came to pass. I did remember hearing Heiskanen's name a little bit before that draft, but from a national standpoint before that draft, it was all Patrick or Ishier and Patrick. Yeah. Whoever the Devils were taking, the Flyers are getting the other guy, and there was no question about that. So, but now it looks like a terrible pick.
That's like every draft, though, right? You can always go back with the revisionist.
You can and revisit. That's why these, like I say, the prospects are suspects. So, Cutter Gauthier is down the road. I'm more concerned with. I will be watching how he plays in college this year, but it's more to me about the guys that are going to be here, guys that might be in Lehigh Valley that might be able to graduate here during the course of the year. Like I don't go too much deeper into the prospects than that. I'll check with Bill Meltzer. He watches all the games and say, hey, who's looking good to you? But to me, it's more about the guys who are going to be here this year or have a chance to be here this year. And Cutter has just got to play some hockey because, you know, he played a lot on the wing and he's going to play center this year. So he's going to learn some things and we're going to see if he's a center. And if he becomes a winger, not bad, but he's not as valuable as a winger. And now you start to think of pick that high. You better hope that he is a center. And everybody tells me he's made to be a center. So hopefully that is the case. But I'll watch him from afar this year, but more concerned about other guys right now.
Fair enough. So you got any other questions? Otherwise, we'll wrap it up.
Not much. Just one last point. Just with Tyson Forster, you were saying you're really interested to see him, Jim. I just thought to mention that, I mean, when he got drafted, the late Dale Howardchuk thought that, you know, he had one of the greatest shots in that first round for the prospects that got picked. So I think he's a guy that really knew what he was talking about. So I think fans have the reason to be excited.
Yeah, the late great Dale Howard-Chuck. I think that I've seen enough from him in rookie games and in scrimmages, preseason games, and in the AHL. Because as a very young player, because of the pandemic, he gets to play in the AHL
and played well.
That he can finish. And I'm pretty sure he can finish at the NHL level. So, and the Flyers need finishers. Yeah. So, can he do it this year? I'm sure they're going to want to give him some time in the minors, or I would suspect that's where he's going to be. But the
potential's there for sure.
I'm excited about watching him. I know he's a really determined kid. He's a very confident kid. And Noah I want to see because I love the way he plays the game. And Cam York, people like when they say no high-end talent with the draft picks, Cam York's high-end talent.
Definitely.
I mean, you got to give him a little time. He's 21 years old.
All these guys are still very young, right?
Joel Farabee is still
22. Joel
Farabee is, last year he had injuries and his numbers dropped off a little, but
the development's not always a linear thing with these younger guys, right?
Well, it is. It's just that
almost never.
Flyers never draft high-end talent. Claude Giroux, Jeff Carter, if you want to go further back. Jeff
Mike
Carter,
Richards.
Simone Gagne. Where do you hear that? I hear that on defense. They, until Progroff hadn't had the homegrown defenseman. I understand. I've heard that, but they've had and Carter Hart is a second round pick, but I still think there's a lot of talent there. So again, everything's kind of been colored by these last 2 years, and it's all negative. We hope that this year, and this is a good point to end on. We hope that this year, with a new coach and with a new start and everything, that some of these young players look better because they started to. Some of the young veterans back in 1920, and then even the younger
those steps
this year. So we'll see. I don't know where you can make a blanket statement like they don't ever draft high-end players, but
it's ridiculous.
That's the way we are right now because we're coming off 2 terrible years. So everything's bad.
The optimism is really there with a lot of the unknowns and a lot of the younger guys potentially, grabbing those opportunities, I would say.
Yeah, and having said that, I stand by what I said earlier. There's a certain amount of pressure on these players because if they aren't playing well, I don't know what management could do, but to say, okay, it's just not working, and we have to move on.
But sometimes the pressure could be a good thing, right? So
and they're gonna get pressure from their coach. So I'm looking forward to it. I look forward to every season, but
this one's especially interesting, I'd say.
Yeah, it's interesting because of how bad they were last year. Again, decimated by injuries. That's the one thing that would really spoil it. If they just get racked with injuries again, it really will stink. But hopefully they don't, and they get a fair shot at it, and they got a shot to show people that they're better than they were last year and the year before.
I'm hoping for a good season. I have a good feeling. I believe in John Tortorella.
I like to hear that. 25 miles a week. I'm going to go work out now.
I know. I'm motivated. You got me.
Man, I'm embarrassed.
Lead by example. That's all I got to say.
You're lean too. It doesn't look like you have any extra weight there.
Intermittent fasting, dieting. I lift 3 days a week. Well,
you got the whole
5 days a week. Yeah, I'm a crazy fitness.
Intermittent fasting. How does that's worked for you?
It works really, really well.
Which one do you do? Do you do
I do an extreme one. I start at 5 p.m. Yeah, I start at 5 p.m. I'm done, and I don't eat past 10 p.m. So I do a 5-hour window. It took me a while to get to this.
That's it?
Yeah.
You just have a 5-hour window where you don't eat?
5-hour window. No, 5-hour window where I eat. The rest I don't eat.
Yeah. To say that's not too tough. I can handle that. Yeah. I've seen I saw 2 different ones. One was where you just don't eat for a 18-hour period. Pretty close to. But I was eating from 10 to 4.
Yeah, that's great.
Right. And then I didn't have any trouble doing that. I was not that. Occasionally maybe a craving late at night or something.
Yeah.
Not really trouble with that. The other one was where you eat regular, 3 or 4 meals, and then the next day you don't eat at all.
I feel like that's the hard one for sure.
That would be hard.
Yeah.
By the later stage of that, you're going to start.
What you're doing there is you're spiking your metabolism, and then you're giving your digestive system a long period of rest. Again, we were talking about recovery is everything. I'm like going to go off topic, but recovery is everything, including your digestion. It's a big reason why I don't eat the next morning. There's actually a TED talk, Johns Hopkins TED talk that I saw a while ago, and he actually implores you not to eat breakfast because your body is designed to starve. Everything that your body does is to mitigate risk. So when you go to bed, it stores energy, assuming you will not find food the next day. So when you add food into your system that next morning, typically the average person is not burning calories early. You're just waking up, you're sitting down, you're not doing anything. If you're an athlete, you can eat whatever you want. But if you're the average person, you have enough energy stored in your body. So what you do is you allow your body to use it for the walking, whatever it is you do. And typically people will eat around like noon, 1 o'clock.
Yeah.
And that way you allow.
Interesting. I mean, for so long, you guys are too young, but for so long in my life, breakfast
the opposite.
Is the most important.
I remember
the pyramid.
The
gives you
pyramid.
your fuel for the day. Yeah. And
100%. Yeah.
I mean, so now it's totally different. And the problem is living as long as I have, it's my favorite meal now. I love breakfast. But I do not wake up hungry. You're absolutely right about that.
Well, same thing here. Even for me, usually I'll always skip out on breakfast, then usually just grab dinner pretty much.
I eat breakfast for dinner every day. That's what I do.
Exactly.
You eat breakfast?
I eat breakfast for dinner every day. Coffee and eggs and sausage, whatever. That's what I eat for dinner every day because breakfast is my favorite meal. So I was like, all right.
Wrong.
So I guess they could. I wasn't smart enough to think of that. You don't have to have eggs in the morning.
You could do it whenever you want, I guess.
I'm big eggs and fruit. So
you let me know. You let me know, Jim. I can always recommend you other stuff.
I usually lose 10 to 15 pounds every summer, and then the season
it's a whole different
traveling, eating on the plane, eating in the hotels.
Yep,
not low cal.
Might as well enjoy it though.
And they're feeding us like for people who've played a hockey game. I have not. So I put that back on, and then I lose it again in the off season. I even lost it when I was doing baseball because the Citizens Bank Park, the food is tremendous.
Oh yeah.
So it was a real struggle for me for 14 years where I used to lose it all in the summer. I'd have to work really hard to lose it in the summer when I was working the Phillies. But the thing is, I'm running around all the time doing the Phillies. Because I'm not sitting, I'm all over the ballpark. Right. It was. So
that's a big part of it.
I stayed more active, so it didn't kill me, but I didn't lose as much as I am now. I'm down to where pretty much I could lose about 2 more pounds before the season starts, but it'll start going back on as soon as the season starts. I call it the coatsy lifestyle on the road. It's just a killer. So it's not all about what I eat, unfortunately, either. Too.
I think I could give you some tips to help with that. If you're ever interested, I might be able to give you some tips because I found a weird way to adapt my eating to whatever weird lifestyle I have. That's like my whole thing. Whatever it is I'm doing. Like everything is optimization. So you never know.
Nothing that you do applies to me because you run 25 miles a week. So I can guarantee I don't do that. Although I do walk. I walk. I don't run too much. It's kind of a walk run. There's a little bit of running. Oh. But I'm usually on a treadmill in the summer. To me, it's too hot.
I try to do a bike like usually between my lunch at work. I'll get a bike ride in.
I'll do 5 miles. I did 5 miles last night on the treadmill. So
awesome. That's my aim. That's my aim.
60-year-old guy. That's not bad, right?
That's fantastic.
I aim for 5 miles, so you're doing mine too.
Yeah.
But then I'll do some weight training. I find I lose more weight when I'm doing weight training than cardio.
Yeah, you burn the calories a lot of the time.
It does make sense to a degree. It depends on what you're doing, what you're eating. There's different types of energy sources, so that's also something you can consider. Like carbohydrates are one kind of energy.
Look where we took this podcast. We're not talking flyers. We're talking.
This is my brain
and training and nutrition.
We'll talk more offline.
There, it's thrilled.
Yeah,
you'll probably edit that out, right?
No,
not
live.
At all. Is this live?
No, we're not live. Thank God.
Yeah, I was gonna say you can edit this down pretty well. Yeah,
we got the fitness half for the next podcast.
There you go. Fitness with Jim Jackson. People are gonna say what?
Absolutely, it's perfect. Perfect.
All right, guys.
Thank you so much, Jim. I really appreciate it. One more thing though, you still doing those classes? Do you want to shout that out?
Absolutely. Yeah. Broadcast coaching. It's easier now too. I basically have a website now. It's just jimjacksonbroadcasting.com. And you go there, you can click on the broadcast coaching, Cameo. I'm going to start doing more YouTube stuff. I think once the season gets going, just kind of, we don't even do 3 of the first 4 games. So the Nationals the opener is on
Hulu and ESPN
streaming
Plus.
only. Yeah. So, maybe I'll watch the game on YouTube or something and comment as it happens. I don't know. Who knows? More to the point, I'm going to do little recorded things on there, but you're going to get that. And also I do narration of audiobooks and voiceovers. So you can get any of that at jimjacksonbroadcasting.com. But the coaching has been great. I didn't do camps this summer, stuck to one-on-ones. Very proud that a couple of my students have graduated up levels. One's in the AHL now, and another one is doing some work at CBS. So it's really fun, and I'm staying in touch with all of them. So it's really cool. But a lot of people think that I stop once the season starts, and that's not true. I still can do the sessions. We use Zoom, so I can still fit them in during the season. So good to get the word out there that it's still going on. I'm gonna have to send out a LinkedIn post and a tweet at some point to say that I'm still doing it even though the season started. But jimjacksonbroadcasting.com is where to go.
Perfect. Thank you. And yeah, definitely guys, make sure to check it out. Obviously it works coming from the guy himself. So, I don't think you give better advice. Again, thank you everybody for listening. Vasili, thank you again, buddy. Please like, subscribe, share, rate, do the whole thing. Whatever you guys do is really, really appreciated. Everything you guys do is appreciated. And like Jim was saying, try to stay positive. Not everything's as bad as everybody thinks, and get excited for the season a little bit. It's okay. It's okay to get excited now.
It is. It's okay to be excited.
It's okay.
It really is.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, everybody. We love you. And remember, always stay pretty.